Coming up on Tech News Today, Google's working on space elevators, NVIDIA and AMD are working on supercomputers, everybody's going crazy, and iTunes Match launch. Is it any good? We'll talk about that and the upcoming Kindle Fire next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Monday, November 14th, 2011. Tech News Today is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 20% off your new account for 6 months, go to Squarespace.com and use offer code TNT11. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
I'm Jason Howell.
And joining us today, Mr. Dan Patterson back on the show. Good to have you, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Hey, great to be here.
Thank you for providing an East Coast perspective. America doesn't get it often enough.
Not nearly as often.
Actually, we don't. We're always West Coast. We're always like Pacific time. It's the only time. And
doing business with people in tech, my goodness.
I know. We're horrible.
Or
So
if they have East Coast people, they transplant them over.
So I am.
Schedule a meeting for 9 p.m.
Yeah, it sounds silly, but it is good to get an East Coast perspective on tech shows. And you provide one of the best. Happy to have you along with us today. Let's start off with iTunes Match going live. iTunes 10.5.1 kind of sneaked out today. I had to go download it manually. It didn't show up in my updates.
It showed up in mine.
First thing this morning.
I actually, yeah, but by the time it did, I didn't have time to, I have all my music on a different computer than this one, so it's going to be a bit of a project, but I'm looking forward to it.
Matches all your songs with songs that are already in the iTunes store. And if it can't match them, it then uploads those songs so that you have access to them in the cloud and can access to them on any device that you're logged into. So a phone, a tablet, another desktop computer. And on top of that, it upgrades all those songs to 256K AAC for you. You get a limit, though. You have unlimited songs if they match songs in the iTunes Store, but you can only have 25,000 other songs that don't match the songs in the iTunes Store.
So if you spent a lot of time ripping CDs and creating an online collection and you didn't get them from iTunes.
Of rare or weird stuff. I mean, if you've been ripping Katy Perry CDs, those are all going to match.
Yeah.
But if you've got some, like, import live.
Fish fans, deadheads.
Yeah,
bootleg tape sort of stuff. Really cool indie pressings that never made it in the iTunes Store. You got a lot of those. You had a limit of 25,000 there.
I mean, there was a time for a while before when iTunes songs were all DRM'd, so I started buying everything from Amazon. But almost in no case was something at Amazon that wasn't also at iTunes.
Yeah,
so I don't
most
even
of
think
that
that
stuff's
stuff
gonna
would
match.
matter.
Yeah.
If the labels were willing to deal with Apple, they probably worked with Amazon as well, because Amazon was, I think Amazon was later. At least their DRM-free store was. So, I mean, that's... I'm trying to think of the music I have. I probably do have my share of Beatles stuff that's unreleased, so to speak, bootlegs. But there's no way I got 25,000 of these things. So I don't think I'll ever run at this limit.
Now, if we're reading the Apple website correctly, the way this works is everything is uploaded and matched. Anything that you purchased from iTunes is always going to be available to you. Any of that stuff, like Sarah was talking about, that you purchase at another store, like Amazon, and then matched, you have to be paying the $25 a year fee to have access to in the cloud. And that includes the stuff that isn't matched, or even if it is matched, but you never purchased it in iTunes. So you'll have to keep paying that $25 a year fee if you want to get access to those songs. But anything you buy through the iTunes Store, you have access to for free forever, or as long as the iTunes Store exists.
You know, to Sarah's point about DRM, I know this isn't precisely the same type of DRM that we had 5 years ago, but you remember how heated these discussions were. And when Apple released the no DRM iTunes Store, we were very, very excited. And again, this is not precisely DRM, but it seems to me, in the back of my mind, I've been thinking, isn't this kind of like us paying $25 a year to have a protected, if not song or track, but an ecosystem that is almost as difficult, if not more difficult, once you're locked in, to break out of?
Well, but you get to download those 256K AACs to your hard drive, and they're not DRM. You can go and play them anywhere.
Right. The metaphor isn't exact. It's not like a track for track DRM, but it's more like an ecosystem wide protection, right? This locks consumers in. Once you've paid this $25 a year, very, very reasonable, you will continue to do that, which keeps you harnessed in that Apple system for a very long time.
Although you could just match all those songs, get the free upgrade for $25, and
Sure.
then say, I'm off to Google Music as of Wednesday. I just wanted $25 to, get nicer versions of all this stuff.
That's true. That's true.
Are these files actually replacing, as in like they delete your old file and you no longer have access to that, or is it now there and that's the one that shows up in your library?
It definitely replaces it in the cloud, of course.
Right.
I think if you re-download it, it's going to overwrite the version that you had before.
And what
so
if
if
it's
you're
wrong?
really attached to the metadata in there.
I'm just curious if it's incorrect.
Well, you can wait for those stories to start
those
coming
pop
out.
up,
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly. They'll probably match fine in most cases, but as somebody's going to have a mistake happen and lose that one rare copy of Jonathan Colton singing Jimi Hendrix songs, got replaced by actual Jimi Hendrix songs.
That nobody else on the entire internet has.
Yeah, exactly.
That digital song.
The iTunes Match worked great for me. It actually lickety-split within a half an hour, had matched and uploaded everything. But some people were having problems with it because it became oversubscribed. Some visitors were being advised to come back in an hour. The guy from Forbes said, Fortune said, give it a day or two. I think it's going to be like that, kind of on and off, as people swarm in and try to get it all matched.
I mean, I have a pretty big collection of iTunes songs, again, on a different computer than this. And maybe I'm naive, but it seems like for the vast majority of people, 25,000 songs or less would apply to most. That's a lot of music.
How many songs do I have here? I was out taking a jog. I didn't see how many it actually matched. But if I look at my music, I only have 4,604 actual items in my iTunes music
and many
list.
of them wouldn't even count against that 25,000.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's only 22 gigs. So, yeah, I think this is pretty, for most people, this is going to work really well. Let's move on to Kindle Fire Eve, everyone. Happy Kindle Fire Eve.
Thank
Happy
you.
Kindle Fire
Happy
Eve.
Kindle Fire Eve to you, too.
Happy Kindle Fire Eve to you, Dan.
And you?
Kindle File pre-orders suddenly started changing status this morning. Some people are getting shipping dates that say they will get their Kindle Fires tomorrow, which is launch day. You'll be able to buy them in stores tomorrow. I had a ship date of November 18th originally, and then it changed to shipping soon, and now I have a date of November 16th. So I will be screwed while everyone else gets their Amazon Kindle Fires tomorrow. I'm apparently not getting mine until Wednesday.
Well, you have the
Oh, you
playbook
are
to tie
so
yourself over.
screwed.
Screwed. Well, I was
Wow,
hoping to do the
worst
out-of-the-box
day ever.
video. This
Yeah.
the only reason I'm buying it.
Yeah.
So I might as well just send it back.
Yeah.
Amazon.
Now you don't need it.
Let's
Well, depending on who you read, it's either a pretty good device for $200 or a really awful device for $200, and they should have done everything differently and been a better iPad competitor.
Does it really make anyone feel like the warm fuzzies for Amazon? Like, oh, look, a whole day extra. Does that really make everyone excited or not? That's the
apparently
thing.
yes.
I think it does. I think that's probably baked into their cycle in the product availability, and it's definitely the kind of like the little treat you weren't expecting, or most Amazon customers weren't expecting, and it does increase those warm and fuzzies a little bit.
Taking that little bit of that Zappos DNA when they bought them. They're like, oh, yeah, every order is a VIP thing. Here you go. It's here within a day. Everyone gets upgraded at Zappos. So that'd be kind of a neat little trick. Like, oh, yeah.
I'm sure there are retail psychologists who've studied this.
Oh, and Amazon probably employs them too. I
Yeah,
mean,
sure.
there's a great article in Wired today about Amazon and Jeff Bezos, kind of painting him as the heir to Steve Jobs, saying that Amazon, taking a different tactic from Apple, is dominating the technology world in ways that people don't realize. Because don't forget, Amazon sells books, sells shampoo, sells pretty much everything you can think of. You can get it from Amazon, but they also sell storage. They sell cloud services. They sell some big iron enterprise type stuff, as well as now saying, you know what, we want to be a streaming video provider, and we want to be a book, ebook publisher as well as store. I mean, they've got their arms and everything. And whereas Apple says, we're going to make our money by providing cool services, but that make you buy their products. We make 90% of our money off the devices. That's what Apple says. Amazon makes 50% of their money from selling you media.
Yeah, in fact, they call the Kindle internally a media service.
Yeah.
It is just a way to get that stuff on the internet that Amazon is so good at delivering to you.
So going back to what you were saying about the reviews, I think these reviews are comparing the Kindle Fire to the iPad, and in fact, it's very obvious that they are in the reviews, because everyone wants to see if the Kindle Fire is going to take a market chunk from iPad. Right. And I think that's fair to say, okay, is this as good as the iPad? No, it's not. That's what all these reviews are saying. However, I don't think that's the purchase decision. I don't think people are going in and saying, I want to buy a Kindle Fire instead of an iPad. I think they're buying a Kindle Fire in most cases for entirely different reasons, or because it's $200 and does much of the things that they want.
That these are internet utilities are about the only thing that these products have in common, where the iPad is far more like a digital Swiss Army knife. The Kindle, I've said this before and I'll say it again and I'll stick by this, the most important factor, the most exciting factor about the Kindle Fire is that $200 price point. Yep. This really, really drives down the competitive price point that it sets that low bar in terms of cost of entry to market. And if you think about all of the people who are aspirational towards an iPad, maybe they'll get there. But this allows consumers to get into the market and to work that market and be a part of a digital consumption market at a very, very low cost. It will force competitors who cannot compete on what you said, Tom, that entire ecosystem that Amazon has. It will force the competitors to make very inexpensive internet appliances.
And Bezos has not fallen for the false choice of spiking the deck and saying, well, you know what, if we're going to make a Kindle, we're going to try to lock people into using the Kindle, and we're only going to, he wants to sell media. So when he makes the Kindle, he says, we're going to make the Kindle, but we're also going to make a Kindle app that runs on iPad. And then we're going to make the Kindle Fire that's a competitor in some ways to iPad, but we're also going to continue to provide service to the iPad. We want to sell media, and that's where you see the strategy. We want to sell media anywhere we can. And if that makes making some hardware that's cheap and hooks a bunch of people in, great. But if there's some people who want the devices to do a little more than the ones we make, we're going to be on those platforms as well. You see Amazon trying to be anyway, at least every place that they can. One of the things they need to make that work, though, is developers making their platforms more, taking advantage of that content, making their platforms more valuable. And IDC and Accelerator have a survey out showing that the Kindle Fire is now the most interesting Android tablet for developers in North America. Now, caveat, Android tablet, right? But it beat out the Samsung Galaxy Tab, beat out the Zoom, and the Nook tablet is in 4th place in developer interest. So that's not good for the ecosystem that these tablets are building. And if you want to compare it, before the iPad launched, before it kind of got the attention of the world, remember, a lot of people said, I don't know why anyone would buy this. But even at that point, 53% of developers surveyed at the time said they would develop for the platform. Right now, with the Kindle Fire getting some lukewarm reviews, 49% of developers surveyed said they would like to develop for the Kindle Fire platform. So very close to the same interest that the iPad had before launch.
And what's interesting is that, I mean, there was an app, there were other app ecosystems to develop for previously before iOS. But if you now have iOS as a choice and something like the Kindle Fire as a choice, for those numbers to be so close to each other, you could argue that with iOS, it was like, well, you got a couple other sort of fragmented systems, or this big, robust, hugely emerging iOS ecosystem app market. So I don't know. I think it looks good for Kindle.
Credit cards attached to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking at the graph with the Android tablets that are out there, and the Galaxy Tab has the big power and money behind with Samsung behind it, that is, and they have a lot of money with a lot of advertising with that kind of thing. The Zoom has the Google Marketplace, the real one, right? The thing is, if you look at the other ones like the Nook, which was very popular as a cheap Android like hobby, pretty much, it didn't exactly have the same kind of app store. Now Amazon has their own app store that you can put on any Android device. So I think because they have not just the tablet, they have their own app store that's a legitimate app store that people are like, yeah, our Android apps work there too, and they'll even promote our stuff, and it does good numbers for a lot of people. I mean, that's one of the other reasons why their tablet can do so well compared to something like, I don't know, like a Vizio or something. If you don't have access to a really robust app store itself, I mean, if you can't make one, I mean, Amazon made an app store. I mean, other companies have tried this. Arcos has tried this. They've done cheap tablets. They've come up with their own app stores, but it's not the same kind of pull.
When Amazon has like free app of the day, for example, gets a lot of interest. A lot of developers say that people are exposed to their apps that wouldn't have before. I mean, they've got a good thing going with their app store.
Now, that graph we saw, if you notice, Samsung Galaxy Tab interest is above the Amazon Kindle Fire. That's worldwide. North America is where the Kindle Fire is #1. So it is a little spin on the numbers there. Also in this study, it looks like the OS that is still the most popular to develop for is iOS. That lead is solidified. Android is still #2, although it's slipped a bit. Windows Phone has moved into the #3 most popular operating system to develop
what
for.
used to be #3?
RIM used to be #3, and they're seeing waning interest for both the current and the QNX-based operating system. So more bad news for RIM. Don't mean to pile on, but good news for Windows Phone. As it is not only passing RIM, but it looks like it might even be nibbling a little bit at Android, which didn't slip a lot, but it did slip.
It could be why RIM put some money into its Android player, so they can still run Android apps. So if you're not interested in developing for BBX or QNX,
absolutely,
they still have the backup of Android apps.
Well, and I wonder how much of this is confidence, right? If you have to have a #3 player, what we've seen with RIM over the last 6 to 12 months has not instilled a ton of business confidence. Like which company will be there? It will be Microsoft. So if you're going to develop and if you're going to put your time into something, if I were developing for either or operating system, I would absolutely go Microsoft over RIM.
Microsoft's not going to go out of business or get acquired.
Right.
At least in the next couple of years. Let's take a break and thank our sponsor, Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. If you have not tried Squarespace and you want to build a website, do us a favor. Go do it right now. It's absolutely free. You don't have to use a credit card. You don't have to do anything. You can even easily import your current blog. Keep the blog where it is, import it into Squarespace, and compare. I think you'll like the comparison. Squarespace is really easy to use. They have an iPhone, iPad, and Android app. The Android app has the same features as all the other apps, so you can publish from your phone, you can publish from your desktop, and if you do run into issues or if you have a question about how to do something tricky, you can get their support team on the line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is the easiest way to put together a high-quality, good-looking website. They have amazing templates in there. So go try it out. Absolutely free, no obligation, no credit card needed, Squarespace.com. If you do decide to pay for the service, if you do like it, use this code, TNT11, and get 20% off for 6 months. So even if you just like Tech News Today, go start a Squarespace.com site because it helps show that people are listening and hearing the Squarespace offer and taking advantage. And if you do decide to keep it, use that code, TNT11. You get 20% off for 6 months. And we thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today. On to Google Music. Remember, it's Wednesday that Google has an event. This one goes to 11 or some such thing. It's at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Technodroidve has published, it's a Spanish language blog, has published what it says are leaked screenshots from the music service. Android Police says Technodroidve uncovered the music store on an HTC Inspire 4G. It wasn't operational, but it had these pages. So a free song of the day page, for instance. There were some artist page that showed Green Day music, for example, available for $1.29 or 99 cents per song. So, cool. It looks a little cluttered, but it looks like your typical music store.
Yeah, and it seems, it looks very similar to the stylings that they rolled into the revised Android market for mobile. The free song of the day is something that if you've been in the Google Music beta, since they announced it back at I.O., they actually have started to do that on the website on a daily basis. There's a place that you can check for like a free track of the day. So it doesn't really surprise me that much that it would end up in the mobile, but it's nice to see that it is in there. There's a screenshot of it. Yeah, there isn't probably a whole lot more to say about the app necessarily. It's just kind of looks like it's close, and let's hope it's in a couple of days.
CNET has learned that Google has signed a licensing agreement for the new service with Universal Music Group. They don't know if an agreement has been signed with EMI, but CNET does report, Greg Sandoval reports, that Sony and Warner are not on board for Google Music. So they'll be launching with maybe only one or possibly two of the big four music groups.
One of which may be dismantled sooner than later.
Yeah, one of which is going to get bought by the other one shortly.
Yeah.
Because Universal is buying EMI.
That seems weird to me. I don't know how. If you had two of the, we still have four, the big four. If you've got 3 out of the 4 or 2 out of the 3. I don't know. It's like without a majority.
Well, I mean, to even get into the marketplace, I mean, when Google did its first music offering, it was upload your own stuff. Maybe to get people used to the idea, yeah, you can buy music from us. Yeah, we have a store. Yeah, we have free music every day, and maybe publicize that a little bit more. People are like, oh, maybe when it grows, they'll think, oh, it's gotten better and better. I don't know if that strategy is going to work, knowing that there's other things.
It did work for iTunes back in the day.
But they were the first one,
That was back
right?
in the day.
So, like,
well, yeah, exactly. There weren't a lot of music stores back then, so they could launch with Universal, or when they went iTunes Plus, remember, Universal were the only songs that were DRM free. That worked. These days, it's harder to make a way
to justify
unless
the
you're
way you're
I don't know,
building.
a huge company with a lot of cash who can afford to lose money on it for a couple of years while you work out the rest of the deals.
Google also does things like this. Hey, here's our product. It's not perfect yet. It will get better.
Like
and we'll
pages.
let you know as we roll out new features.
like Google TV, like Android, like
Google Plus.
Google Plus.
Plus. Actually, Plus would start off pretty okay. Which started off as what? Buzz?
Like everything but search. Search was good right out of the gate.
They nailed that one.
Yeah.
there is a forum. I won't say that I know anything specifically about this, but there is a forum called the Velvet Rope, which has been around for ages and ages, and it is the music business gossip forum where managers, agents, those who work for major and indie record labels go to post things. Often you do have to be in a private tier, but you can learn a lot about the ruminations, if not the specifics of an event like this, the ruminations prior to events like this. It's a great source for speculation, fairly accurate speculation on the music business.
Well, we will take a look at that. One final word. T-Mobile is having an event on Wednesday themselves at 9 p.m. called the Experience the World of T-Mobile and Google event with special guest appearance by Drake and apparently Maroon 5 and Busta Rhymes, Dirty South Rehab, all going to be there. So it's a music-based event in Los Angeles, somehow associated with Google, 7 hours after the Google event starts. So I think it's pretty safe to say that it's a Google Music related event. And T-Mobile, if you look at the Google invite, apparently there's like a small T-Mobile logo inside one of the pictures.
And if you look up some of these artists, their labels are owned by Universal. I looked this up. Drake, Maroon 5, Busta Rhymes.
Oh, well, there you go.
They're all Universal.
Nice.
So
nice
there
detective
you
work.
go.
So, yeah, it looks like T-Mobile is going to be involved somehow. Will it be the Nexus Prime coming to T-Mobile with the Android app for Google Music?
Music sharing via NFC. There you go. Actually, they can do that with Beam, right?
Yeah, they can
the
do it all
twist?
kinds of ways.
Lots of different
You can
twists.
squirt.
No.
Let's
That's
just
Thankfully, you can't squirt
let's just
on
keep
Android.
it at bump.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
We don't need squirting.
No squirting.
No reason for that. Google also in the news. New York Times has a report about Google X, a secret lab in an undisclosed Bay Area location, probably Mountain View, run by Sergey Brin. They have 2 offices, a nondescript one for logistics. That one actually is on the Mountain View campus, and one for robots in a secret location. And this is where the Google driverless car came from. This is where they are working on all of those like crazy Google of the future. Apparently, they're working on space elevators. They're working on with the web of things. They're working on clones. I didn't see that part of the article.
Just a rumor.
Okay. Dan Patterson has it on good authority. They're working on clones. We're also seeing the web of things, which I've always been wondering if this is ever going to catch on. But the idea that your garden could use the internet to be watered from remotely, your coffee pot could brew remotely, your light bulbs could be turned off remotely, all connected to the internet and controlled over the internet.
Actually, this stuff's come from email communication throughout the week, but and then this afternoon. But biology, right? So
clones.
What's that?
So clones.
Yes, clones. Right. Clones. Yes.
No, you were going to say biology.
Yeah. Good. We'll just stop there and leave it at clones.
What were you going to say? Now I'm on the edge of my seat.
I had an email conversation before this article came out with someone who wanted to remain in the background, and that Google is experimenting with nanotechnology.
See, I wouldn't put it past it. That's what this thing is about. Google is the new Xerox PARC. They have got the big research center that's out there saying, you know what, go do stuff. They hired the guy who did Connect. They've hired all kinds of scientists in robotics and nanotechnology, and they're saying, go research, come up with cool things, and we will develop them and see what we can do with them and possibly go into new businesses later. The driverless car is the only real public one, but there's apparently a lot of robotics work being done here with the idea
Space
that
elevators, anybody?
they could actually take the robots and send them out to do the Google mapping and then ride in the space elevators.
Of analysis of university data. Like the person I spoke with works at a major university, and this will tie in. As we know, universities are constantly underfunded, and Google has the money to not just distill, but to really analyze on a deep level the information coming out of universities.
Now, this always makes shareholders nervous because shareholders are only interested in how much money you're going to make next quarter. And none of these kinds of projects are going to make you any money next quarter. They're only going to cost you money next quarter. So Google spokeswoman Jill Hasselbacher told the New York Times, quote, "While the possibilities are incredibly exciting, please do keep in mind that the sums involved are very small by comparison to the investments we make in our core business."
It's good to know they have a big secret lab somewhere, or two of them, because I've always wondered where exactly they were testing these driverless cars or building them. I didn't think it was going to be in their office building in Mountain View or any of their buildings. When they bought some property in New York, I'm like, I don't think they're doing it in the office. So it's interesting to see this stuff. I want to see this stuff, the web of things, work. Like, I want things to be able to talk to each other without... Because one of the actual examples was a light bulb that talks to your phone. I'm not sure exactly what you would do there, either than pass data or like maybe you'd have different modes based on what light you're in, like in this studio.
Well,
like,
you could say from the phone here, you could tell the house turn off all the lights. I don't need them on. If I left any lights on, I can turn them all off, save some energy.
That would be great. Like I
or you're on your way home and it senses your phone and it turns the lights on for you because it's like, oh, he's in 100 meters. Yeah. So you walk in, all the lights are on. Your home is warm. The heater goes on. All that stuff works. I think what's coolest about this is we have left well behind the era of Xerox PARC and Bell Labs and all of those big corporate research areas because of the myopic world of stockholders saying we don't want you to be spending money on that stuff anymore. And I'm glad that Google is doing this, saying, you know, we do need to do this research because A, it helps humanity, and B, it will make us money in the long term. So it will pay off if we do it right.
It's funny, a friend of mine back on November 8th or so was driving down the highway down in the South Bay area, Mountain View area, and there was a Google self-driving car on the freeway.
Really?
Yeah, there's a picture of it on Instagram where he's like, I stayed as far away from that car as possible. That's
probably the safest car. I've been right behind that car. I'm like, that's the car that's not going to wreck.
But they are testing that car. That is not a car in a lab underground somewhere. That is on 101 South.
There's been like one accident in their entire tests.
And it was user error.
Well, if it's so perfect, then why aren't we driving them?
People don't like giving up control.
Exactly. All right, let's finish up with supercomputers. Lots of good, like, heavy stuff today in the supercomputer world. The number one supercomputer, the K computer at the Rikon Advanced Institute for Computational Science in Japan, is still number one. They put out these rankings twice a year. K computer, Japanese listeners, you're still number one. Congratulations. But the good news here is the K moved up from 8.16 petaflops, which is the score it used to reach the top spot, to 10.51 petaflops. So that would be 1.05 exaflops to just solidify its top spot. But there's some up-and-comers being developed out there. The University of Illinois National Center for Supercomputing Applications has contracted with Cray to provide a supercomputer for the National Science Foundation's Blue Waters project. Blue Waters will be composed of more than 235 Cray XE6 cabinets based on the new AMD Opteron 6200 processor. We'll talk about that more in News Fuse, but that's the 16-core processor. And it'll also, Blue Waters will have more than 30 cabinets of a future version of the announced Cray XK6 supercomputer with NVIDIA Tesla GPUs. So NVIDIA, AMD, big winners in the supercomputer area. Although if you go back to that top 10 list, most of those computers are running on Intel. So Intel's not worried too much, I don't think, in this area. NVIDIA also announced it'll be providing CUDA GPUs for Barcelona's supercomputing center, with the facility looking to substantially boost its energy efficiency later this week at the SC11 conference in Seattle. So I love the fact that not only we're seeing great supercomputer news, but also that a lot of this off-the-shelf consumer company parts like NVIDIA GPUs, AMD Opteron 6200 processors. I mean, not something you're going to be throwing in your laptop anytime soon, but that kind of processing power is flattening.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this, I see these articles sometimes, I'm like, okay, when is this ever going to affect me? And this is going to affect me in the long term. This stuff always trickles down.
Well, the Opteron could affect you right now. You could go build a desktop and put the Opteron in it.
What used to be a supercomputer is not a supercomputer today.
Yeah,
I mean, this stuff, we could also figure out how to make these things cheaper. This is the other thing you can do with this. You can figure out all kinds of, like, you've seen those projects, folding at home and figuring out proteins. This is the kind of stuff that these supercomputers can do. So I'm just really thrilled that in probably, 5 years, we're going to see some really cool stuff, in your own hands.
I just love supercomputers.
Well, we got to the point right before the show where we were like, what comes after petaflops? Exaflops. Now we're into exaflops.
We're all learning about
That's
those.
awesome.
We just crested the exaflop hill.
Yeah.
Zeta, I think.
But can they play Go?
Oh, they play Go like crazy. And you know what? That is the test, right? Because chess is much easier to program, but Go computers cannot be compared to human computers because of the intuition required.
Right.
That's a good question.
And the amount of computations required, right? So a chess move or a Go move is exponentially more possibilities than in Go. So, right, I don't say that in jest. I mean, like, if you can beat me in Go, then
you rightly laid down the challenge to the K computer. Can you beat anyone in Go? Anyone? I mean, even me. I suck at Go. K computer couldn't even beat me. Actually, probably whip my ass. Let's move on to the news feeds. We got some more processor news, folks. As promised, AMD's 16-core Opteron news. Here you go. You might know it as Interlagos. That's the code name. It's finally shipping. AMD says Opteron is faster and more power efficient than the comparable Intel Xeon. It's a server-focused chip that uses 8 2-core modules. So it's not a 16-core chip per se, but it does have 16 cores. On the consumer side, Intel released its Sandy Bridge E today. First one is out, the Core i7-3960 Extreme Edition with 6 cores. This is scheduled to be the last step before the Intel release of Ivy Bridge. The Sandy Bridge E actually has 8 cores on the die, but only 6 are active due to power and yield constraints. So remember, Opteron, 16 cores, but really only 8 2-core chips. Intel, 8 cores, but only 6 are active, so 6-core chip. Clear?
Clear.
I think so. Iran's civil defense body says the Dooku malware infection is under control, everybody. Iranian officials say that this is the 3rd attack in a recent wave of malware attacks, the first being Stuxnet, the second the keylogger Stars, and lastly, Dooku. Analysis of the Dooku code hasn't led authorities to the creators, but researchers did find the shellcode of an exploit in a font listed as created by Showtime called Dexter Regular.
Really, Dexter. Nice.
The Verge published details on what could be the first BlackBerry phone running BBX, codenamed the London. You're looking at a dual-core TI OMAP CPU, 1 GB of RAM with a front-facing camera, a rear-facing camera. And if those sound like good specs now, hang on. It's not coming out till June 2012. Style-wise, it looks a bit like the Porsche-designed BlackBerry, but there's no physical keyboard. And those pictures, by the way, you might have seen, that's a dummy unit. That is not an active working unit.
Sprint's still trying to win your business by being the cheaper, better alternative, and they just introduced a revised set of mobile broadband plans. For any data-only device, $50 buys you 6 gigabytes of data. $80 will get you 12 gigabytes, which I don't think anybody except maybe Verizon's doubled 4G plan will even give you 12 gigabytes of data. If you have a hotspot, you have those options plus a $35 for 3 gigabytes option. Tablet owners get all those options with one more choice, $20 for 1 gigabyte if you need like a really small plan for your tablet. Maybe you're just going to use Wi-Fi all the time. You'll get access to Sprint's 3G and so-called 4G networks with those plans. Sprint also introduces a new hotspot called the Express, made by Huawei for $30 with a 2-year contract. And these plans don't affect Sprint smartphone users who still have the unlimited data option. You can keep that for now.
On to patent wars. A Samsung executive told Korean newspaper The Chosunilbo that the company will not file an injunction to stop the iPhone 4S from being sold in its home country of South Korea. The newspaper says the decision was apparently driven by public relation concerns. Samsung is currently suing Apple around the world in places like Australia and Italy and Japan, so this sort of non-move may actually be a big move.
Apple doesn't seem to be worried about any kind of public relations fallout. They're suing the crap out of Samsung wherever they can.
Last Friday, Apple announced a replacement program for the first generation iPod Nano. iPod Nano, saying in very rare cases, the battery in the iPod Nano, first generation, may overheat and pose a safety risk. The plan requires you to send in your super old Nano and expect a replacement about 6 weeks later. Apple says to back up your iPod Nano because you are getting back a non-personalized replacement. So
yeah, because they don't have a bunch of first-gen Nanos sitting around, right? They're just going to send you the current one.
I'm really curious about what you would get back.
I would go to eBay, buy a first-gen iPod Nano, take it to Apple, swap it out. You got yourself a brand-new Nano for cheap.
I have first-gen Nano.
You can swap it in. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Google announced that it will offer around-the-clock phone support for users of its Google Apps for Businesses product. The company already offered phone support for critical issues, but now Google will offer anytime support for core services like Gmail, Calendar, and Docs. The support will be available to small, medium, and large businesses. The announcement stopped short of saying, take that Microsoft Office 365, but it did actually mean that you can get someone on the phone at Google for once. Thank you.
DigiTimes reports that HTC is likely to launch a new tablet powered by the quad-core NVIDIA Tegra 3 at Mobile World Congress in February. Meanwhile, Engadget reports that Lenovo will introduce a Tegra 3-based 10.1-inch tablet by the end of the year. The site even managed to grab some close-up pics of the Lenovo tablet that will have a fingerprint scanner that maybe also uses the joystick for games, all sorts of possibilities. They both ought to be running that sweet new version of Android, ice cream sandwich.
Sweet ice cream.
Tasty.
One of the co-founders of Diaspora, Ilya Zhytomyrsky, died at the age of 22 over the weekend. Diaspora was founded by 4 students at NYU's Courant Institute of Mathematical Sciences. The cause of Zhytomyrsky's death has still not been reported.
Yeah, but sudden and very tragic there. So you know, we're very sad to hear that. I'm a user of Diaspora. I've wished them well. So you know, hopefully they can get through this. But we're very sorry to hear that. Let's move on to the randomizer.
Randomizer.
Robotic polar bears. Now, you may think they probably either want to steal your Coca-Cola or kill you and eat you, but this one just wants to stop you from snoring. And not by killing you and eating you. It just nudges you with its cute little polar bear arm because it's from Japan. So while the businessman sleeps and snores, the polar bear reaches over and softly pushes his head to stop the snoring.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going to train you to stop snoring so much as it's going to make you not be able to sleep for a very long time.
Or possibly make a bunch of people stand around you while you're sleeping going, "Oh, look at that cute polar bear."
It's so peaceful when he sleeps on his polar bear that keeps tickling his face.
I don't understand why it has to be a polar bear. Now,
would you rather wait a minute? What animal would you be comfortable with?
It doesn't need to be anything. It's a device to help you stop snoring. I don't like sleeping next to anybody who snores, so I'm all about the technology, but I'm just weirded out by the polar bear part of it.
I wonder if this is, I mean, pure speculation. I wonder if this is just a part of Japan's work culture. You know, if you don't have a spouse, it looks like it's kind of cuddling with somebody, and you know, it does something, pushing him in the head. You know, the same thing your spouse would do.
But if you don't have a spouse, then snore away.
But wait a second. If you have this thing, right? If you didn't have the polar bear,
that's a damn good point.
If you didn't have the polar bear look to this thing, wouldn't it look like a tentacle or something horribly scary? It would make you just afraid of this thing that's it's touching your face.
Well, can't you imagine laying there being like, it's gonna do it again. It's gonna do it again. I guess you'd be awake and you wouldn't be snoring.
You wouldn't be snoring, so it's working.
There you go. That's how he keeps the elephants away,
Confused by robotic polar bear snoring device.
Well, there's only one way out of this conversation, Jason Howell. Wipe us out with a money wipe. Or explosion wipe works.
Explosion.
Yeah,
that was money.
Something like...
There we go. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The sort of on-the-fly.
Why are we getting wiped out?
What else you got in your tank? It's football season, but okay. All of those wipes are default. You don't have to add them on the new TriCaster system, and we're using the TriCaster 850 like it's going out of style, but it's not. It's actually new and in style, so check it out. It's like having your own giant TV truck. There we go, football season. This magical box is a 24-channel system with everything you need to make a television show, including amazing virtual sets. And we use it for desktop production, but you can use it for portable production. We always take it with us to CES in Las Vegas when we go. It's like having the whole studio there with us. We can do everything we do here, there, using the TriCaster. Lets us broadcast, live stream, project, and record HD. We thank the folks at TriCaster for letting us use the new TriCaster 850. Check it out at newtek.com, NEWTEK.com.
It's amazing we get anything done with all those effects.
I know. Jason, commend Jason for his restraint.
I commend you.
Yeah.
Well,
He could be doing that like all the time.
I like it. It's like a little spice on top of your meal, just in little doses. You don't need a lot.
Let's move on to the calendar. Just a little calendar.
Want to thank Exor, EXORE on Twitter, who pointed out to us that Ice Cream Sandwich has been open sourced and is being uploaded to Google servers now. AT&T is going to launch the 4G Samsung Galaxy Tab 8.9 and arrive in 6 new LTE markets on November 20th. If you'd like to know what those markets are: Charlotte, Indianapolis, Kansas City, Las Vegas, Oklahoma City, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. Deadline for submitting dataset ideas to KDD Cup is tomorrow. Reminder that KDD Cup is the annual data mining and knowledge discovery competition organized by the ACM Special Interest Group on Knowledge Discovery and Data Mining. And finally, tomorrow, Halo Combat Evolve is launching. It is game season, isn't it?
It is video game season. Also, a minor correction, 10 petaflops, not 1 exaflop. An exaflop
that would
is
be 100.
10 to the 18th flops. Petaflop is 10 to the 15th flops. So it's just 10 petaflops.
Thank you for the flop adjustment.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So please adjust your flops.
I was all excited that we got into exaflops.
All right.
Whatever.
Let's move on to incoming.
Incoming message.
Now, tomorrow we'll get a bunch of incoming messages saying, you got the flops thing wrong, because people will have stopped before we made the correction. But today we have an email from Ryan in Zeering, Iowa. Says the last several days, even on TWiT last night, there was a lot of talk about Adobe killing off mobile Flash, focusing the attention on Adobe Air and HTML5. Now, Flash, as we all know it and sometimes loathe it, is on the way out, like other browser plugins. Anyone remember VRML or Java applets? What's been overlooked and hardly mentioned is Flash's relationship with Adobe Air. Yes, like the new Windows 8 runtime, which supports development in HTML, JavaScript, or Silverlight, Air supports development in HTML, JavaScript, or Flash. So what we'll probably see in the future is Flash content running inside its own container rather than inside the browser. Is that going to resolve the bugginess, the battery life concerns, and the security implications? That ball is in Adobe's court, but what you are seeing here is not the death of a product, but rather its repackaging, because they know they'll never win in the mobile browser war. Good points, Ryan. I think it does signify the slow death, but it's a lot slower than maybe you would think if Adobe's just yanking mobile Flash and saying we'll never develop it again. Instead, it's going to be packaged up in Air. But the result's the same. Flash is being phased out. And I think putting it inside Adobe Air says, well, if you still want to use it in mobile, here's an option for you. So it's not totally gone. But Adobe, very smart to say, but we're not going to try to push it into the forefront anymore. But good email, Ryan. Thanks.
Another email from Christopher Copping in Portland, Oregon. Hey, TNT crew. I was recently listening to CNET's Reporters Roundtable episode 100 with special guest Tom Merritt. I very much enjoyed the predictions of tech.
We're getting email for Rafe's show on this show?
Well, you were in it, so.
Well,
that's
okay.
That's applicable. All right. I very much enjoyed the predictions of tech and tech companies for the next 11 months to 11 years or so. I do have one question concerning the AT&T T-Mobile merger. Though I agree that the merger is most likely to go through, if it doesn't, T-Mobile is pretty much dead in the water. People seem to forget that there's a part of the agreement that stated if things fall through, AT&T will pay T-Mobile $3 billion in cash and give it a small portion of AT&T's spectrum. So my question is, if the merger doesn't go through, do you think T-Mobile will get into the LTE race and create more competition with this cash and spectrum infusion, or are they just sunk no matter what they do? Love to hear your thoughts.
I am very curious about this because I hadn't put that all together. I've forgotten that they were getting some spectrum. Because my opinion is, yeah, if T-Mobile doesn't get bought by AT&T, they don't have the spectrum to compete. They're on their last legs, and they probably just get folded up or chopped up and sold for parts. However, if this does fall apart, which I still don't think it will, but if it does, T-Mobile would get some spectrum. I don't know what spectrum they get. I don't know if it's a good enough slice of spectrum that, say, the iPhone could run on it if it was made for all the major players. The problem right now is that you can't use an iPhone on 3G, for example, because the spectrum that T-Mobile uses for 3G is different than everybody else. And that's the issue. I don't know that this spectrum will solve it or not, but it could. Dan, do you have any thoughts on this? Is there any hope for T-Mobile?
I think there's hope for T-Mobile.
A long H hope. Yeah.
But I think, speculating about what type of spectrum they may or may not get as a part of a breakup fee, that really, really sounds like one of those, we'll throw you a little bone. If we can't buy you, then we'll give you a little something. And it sounds like the kind of thing that is negotiated after a particular instance happens. I want to love T-Mobile. With all of my heart, I want to love T-Mobile, but this does not bode well.
They do get $3 billion, too.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's some walking around money.
It's some operational runway, but after a breakup like this, I mean, it's like when your fiance dumps you. You're okay, but you're damaged for life, man.
Yeah.
Well,
and who's going to want you?
The rebound person Sprint, right?
Seconds, yeah.
Either that. I mean, T-Mobile obviously is not going to be nimble enough to do the crazy move Sprint's trying to do. They're like, okay, we're going to do wholesale. We'll partner with Light Squared. We'll buy. We have this huge interest in Clear. I mean, T-Mobile's just kind of waiting around, hoping they're going to be bought. I don't know what they're going to do with $3 billion, but I'm assuming that Sprint might actually try to go after T-Mobile and go, okay, look, you guys are weak, but there's no way there's going to be an antitrust issue with
Sprint's going to give them like $18
ones.
and a pack of smokes.
But they'll be able to be together. Okay, better than the breakup fee.
They'll split the smokes. They'll light off each other. It's going to be very romantic. As they're both out of work. No, I have a feeling within a year and a half, there will be no T-Mobile USA. I have a feeling that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for submitting stories at technewstoday.reddit.com. We use that to find out what stories you care about and work that into our lineup every day. So please go there, technewstoday.reddit.com. And thanks to everybody who's submitting best of moments. We need some help figuring out what are the moments you thought were best on Tech News Today during the year. So go to twit.tv/bestof, BESTOF, and you can tell us what moments you thought were. In fact, if you put in some extra information like the time code, the episode number, all that, it has a better chance of getting in because it's easier for us to find. But do go submit your moments, twit.tv/bestof, and we thank you for your help putting those specials together. We're actually going to do a lot of specials this year. There's going to be a Thanksgiving Day special that we'll record ahead of time, a Black Friday special we'll record ahead of time, and then, of course, in that week between Christmas and the end of the year, we'll have our usual spate of specials, listener call-in show, best of, prediction show, all that stuff. So do keep an eye out for all of that. Dan Patterson, thanks so much for joining us on the show. It's great to have you. Let folks know what you're doing online and where they can find it.
Twitter.com/Dan Patterson is the best place to find me. I have been, although I do have a game podcast coming up in a couple days. I interviewed a couple longtime WoW players, and they talked about their most poignant moments in game. But I've been spending time down at Occupy Wall Street. I'm objectively covering this, but as the movement gains steam and gains funding, it becomes more and more interesting.
Yeah, it is really gone from sort of a like, hey, these guys are going to do this thing with a hashtag on the weekend. I wonder if it's going to work out, to worldwide phenomenon.
And the influence of tech down there is really, really interesting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? Anytime you want to give us a report on what's going on there, we'd love to have it. And I know the presidential election next year, we got to figure out how Tech News Today is going to cover it, but I know you'll have your feet on the ground for that, as you usually do for that kind of stuff. So we'll probably be we're going to need you a lot, Dan. Is that okay?
Oh, wonderful. Yes, please.
All right, thanks again. Great to have you on the show. And thanks to everybody for watching. Twit.tv/TNT is the website where you can find us. TNT@twit.tv is the email address. And of course, you can find us on the phone, 260-TNT show. That's right. You can call us, leave us a message. If it's good and it's short, we might actually play it on the show, but we listen to all of them. We'll see you tomorrow.